Okay, good morning, everyone. Thanks for joining. I think we're safe to go ahead and get started here. So, Peter, how are you doing this morning?
I'm good, John. How are you doing?
I'm doing great, man. It's great to see you again. Thanks for taking the time to do this with us. We're really excited to get into it. Before we get started, everyone, the chat feature is disabled on the webinar. However, we do have Q&A. So anyone that wants to feel free to ask questions and go through it as we go through this presentation. At the end, we have moderators on here, and we'll leave ample time at the end to address and answer questions as well. The way you access the Q&A is right next to that chat feature on the right-hand side on the bottom right of your screen. You should see shapes. It looks like a triangle, a square, and a circle. Just click on that and click on the Q&A, and feel free to put any questions that you have throughout the webinar going through there, and you'll be able to address those questions, and we'll leave ample time at the end. But let's kick it off. So welcome, everyone. My name is John. I am with Accu. We are the guest experience platform for the hospitality space with hotels, but also vacation rental and property managers as well. This morning, we're lucky enough to have a subject matter expertise. We've got Peter here from Coast to Cactus Vacation Rental Property Management. And what we're going to talk about today is how we've been leveraging AI to help detect and prevent fraud from coming in, mostly from fraudulent bookings. So, Peter, thank you for joining us this morning. We really appreciate your time.
Yeah, no problem. Happy to be here.
Awesome. So, Peter, can you give just everyone on the audience just a quick introduction to yourself, kind of your own personal background, what brought you into the property management space, how long you've been doing it, and kind of what your guys' specialty is with Coast to Cactus?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I'm one of the co-founders of Air Manager and Coast to Cactus Vacation Homes. We are a full-service management company with homes in the Phoenix, Scottsdale metro area and in San Diego. We're very much a small company, but we leverage a lot of great technology like Akia that kind of helps us compete head-to-head with larger companies of our size. So I got into this business actually with my wife about 7 years ago, and started out as a very small kind of company, and we've grown kind of to have around 60 properties across those two markets, and continually growing today. So I'm very passionate about this industry, and kind of always looking forward to the new things that come out to help us grow and leverage our great team that we have in both cities.
And what's gotten you into, I know I don't know if techie is the right word, if you'd say that yourself. I think meeting you, we met in person for some of ERMA a little while ago over in Orlando, and I was stricken by it. I mean, obviously very sharp intertech, but what kind of fed your thirst for tech, and what got you to start leveraging that in this business?
Yeah, well, actually, my career started in e-commerce, so I was that was my world up until I kind of fell into the hospitality and short-term rental space. So I think I was able to take a lot of my learnings from my past life in e-commerce and apply it to this company that we've built. And I've taken a lot of those principles and a lot of those learnings, and have really been able to create a successful tech stack because of that. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, you've got a lot of great insight. Again, we met. I shot you the email yesterday about one of the product features that you requested. Is already live. Yeah, about that. So you've got a lot of great insights, and we'll hopefully get a lot of that information out to everyone today. So again, today what we're talking about is AI. That's probably the biggest buzzword, right, of 2023 as we go into 2024 with OpenAI and all that stuff. And everyone's talking about AI and how can they leverage AI and put it into their business, and how can they do that. From my experience talking to a lot of the property managers, a lot of people diving into using AI, right? I think, Peter, you've seen that as well. And I think a lot of people are really leveraging AI for that, like guest communication while they're on property, which Aki certainly does as well, and leveraging that to like answer questions or like have kind of those after hours conversations, maybe write SOPs. That's probably the biggest thing that I've seen as well, is write some of those standard operating procedures and get a lot of that like tedious work out. What we're going to talk about today is going a little bit beyond that and using it from a different angle. And Peter, you've seen great success with this, which is why we wanted you on here as well, is leveraging AI at that pre-arrival booking stage to really help the business and really kind of deter those fraudulent bookings that can come through, and really talk about like how you can leverage it to really get rid of those kind of fraudulent bookings, as well as some of the other stuff as well. So I'm going to share my screen here for a moment and share some stats as you go through here as well. And then Peter will just open it up and have our conversation here as we go in through it. So let me share my screen here, Peter, if you can't confirm for me when this is good. Can you see my screen? There we go. Okay. Perfect. Okay. So just a couple of things, everyone. Again, if you're just getting started, we're going to talk about AI here today. We're going to have some stats here and talk through the kind of the problems that we've seen this space. Again, if you guys are in the hospitality space, if you're in the PM space, the hotel space, this is certainly applicable to you. So we're going to talk about that. And then Peter's going to share some really personal insights on how he's leveraged this kind of technology to help his business specifically. And so as we go into it, so what is artificial intelligence, right? It's AI, right? So artificial intelligence is AI using machine learning. There's a lot of different ways that you can cut this. But again, most people, at least in my experience, talking to a lot of the leading experts at VRMA and some other industry trade groups as well, is that a lot of people are leveraging AI. ChatGPT, probably the most well-known one, to like write scripts, write SOPs, kind of do some communication like that with guests, which is certainly applicable. What we want to talk about today is how you're leveraging that and how we can help properties leverage that to, again, really help preventing fraud and enhancing the overall security with the property or properties that they manage. So just a couple of industry stats that we've got here to kind of anchor what we're talking about here. So industry-wide in the USA, it's estimated that just under 25 billion, right? That's with a B, billion, is lost every year to fraud. And sadly, like the hospitality space, again, short-term rental or hotel, is really ripe for this, and the fraudulence and the fraudsters like know this, right? And they understand that like if they do late check-ins, if they kind of catch you off guard, that they could slip in there, they can have several days on the property or at your space before anything is reported back to the credit card companies. And so sadly, like this is just an industry, right, that has been ripe for that kind of fraud going back as far as time can imagine here. But we're talking about a lot of money potentially leaking out the bottom, and not only just like the actual hard cost, but just like the soft cost, which is your time, right? And frustration and just all these other things you have to do with it. It's estimated that like 50% of credit card fraud happens in the hotel industry. So that means like half of the credit card industry's fraud is happening in the hospitality space. And you're looking at chargebacks cost 2.6 to 3.5 times the initial loss. And I think, Peter, I think you and I were having this conversation right at VRMA, is like when you have a fraudulent booking come in, let's say it's a 3-day stay, you can't unring the bell, right? You can't put the toothpaste back in the tube. Like once those 3 days have gone, in the hospitality space, you could never recapture it, or you can't go back. So it's not only do you lose the $3,000 that credit card company is disputing back from you, but now you can't resell those 3 days. So it's really a double whammy, right? You're getting hit both times. So it's really a big impact. And again, being more smaller, intimate business, right? You're not Marriott, you're not Hilton, right? So this is deeply impacting you, right? Especially when you talk to this space here. Just over 55% of revenue managers reduce manual tasks with automation, right? So again, how can we automate this? And Peter, I think you've got some great insights on how you can share with this, because everyone's trying to do fraud. And you realize, and you kind of know this very specifically and intimately, that when you start off, you're managing 4, 5, 10, 20 properties. You're like, oh, I don't have a fraud issue. Well, it's because you're very intimate. Every reservation that's coming in, right? You see everyone that's coming through, you can manually do it. But then at scale, how do you manage it? Some of our larger PMs, where they're managing hundreds of units per se, or even thousands of units, there's absolutely no way you can do that manually. So it's going to be at scale, continue just to grow with the business as well. 30% of the hospitality business has faced a rise in payment fraud attempts. This is not an issue that is going away on its own. Okay, this is not just going to solve itself. If anything, it is just getting worse, right? It's going to continue to get worse. And sadly, AI is going to play into making it worse, right? As you look at like biometrics now and kind of fake scams and, sadly, grandmothers being tricked with like very believable voice calls that are happening, thinking that it's their grandchildren. All these things are part of AI, right? So it's a double-edged sword that's going to happen to you. And $2.5 million jobs might be lost to automation in the hospitality space by 2030. So this is a way that, like, again, in the hospitality space, but even in the property management space, well, is you're really facing is like a labor shortage, a skills gap. You're going to have these things where you need to be able to leverage that power of automation that you can go through there as well. So you have to be able to leverage it and really streamline it and be ahead of the curve here. So the problem is the surge in fraudulent transactions before check-in not only puts revenue at risk, obviously, from the chargebacks, it increases the manual burden, it increases the frustration, it increases the burnout of kind of your more frontline staff as well, as they're dealing with a lot of this. And then it's addressing the chargeback issues and the fraudulent charges related to those chargebacks. And so I think this was the big thing, right, that we had talked about, Peter's going back here. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen here, is that oftentimes we, when in my conversations with, just property managers as well, everyone tends to focus on kind of down funnel, right? Like, okay, well, what do I do when I get the chargeback? And can your AI help me, excuse me, like, prepare the correct kind of documents and show that there's an ID with a photo and a signature and kind of prepare all of these things here. But we want to talk about how do we prevent that from happening. And so, Peter, I'd love if you can maybe share some kind of things that were happening, pre-technology that you were using, going back 7 years, like, what kind of issues were you facing? How were you doing those? And then we can go from there and talk about how we're leveraging the tech now.
Yeah, well, I'll kind of back up a bit because really, this issue with us really just kind of happened actually over the last year or so. Is we up until we launched our direct booking website around January of this year, and we also had launched our new property management software as part of that project. That's really when we started to kind of encounter a wave of fraud, I guess you could say, and part of that was us entering new channels, one being our direct booking website, our own, booking website where guests could find us, book, but it also opened the doors to a lot of fraud and potential, issues with chargebacks because we just didn't have a lot of the technology sites like Airbnb, Employ, or Booking.com, or any of these larger OTAs. We don't have a lot of that technology. So a lot of stuff was able to get through the back door, I guess, so to speak. So, so as soon as we launched, in our San Diego, I guess, would you want me to go over kind of some of the fraud we experienced, or?
Yeah, I think that's an interesting correlation that oftentimes people don't think about too, and we kind of talk about that at scale. Is like typically, right? I think you're in line with a lot of PMs, right? Is like when you're just starting out, you're almost solely relying on third-party OTAs, right? Your people, which is they kind of provide that solution for you, right? So it's almost this unconsidered issue that you're not really going to face at scale. And I think what your background has taught you is like at scale, you're going to face different issues, right? I believe it was the notorious BIG, more money, more problems, right? Is they're going to have these things that are going through. And if you don't anticipate them before they happen, now you're kind of caught, and they're sneaking in there. So I think that's an interesting correlation that a lot of people don't realize. And so if we have any smaller, property managers today on today's call, in today's meeting, that's something to consider. Even if you're not facing it today, right, is you start to scale, and as you scale, obviously you want direct bookings for revenue, right? I mean, obviously that's for margin, right? So you can control your margins a lot better when they're direct booking. Is that this is something you're going to face at scale, right, as you get there. So I appreciate you like anchoring that as well. But yeah, I'd love to hear just any kind of war stories that you have going through there as well.
Yeah, so in our San Diego market specifically, we were hit with kind of a wave of crime ring of credit card fraud, I guess you could say, and it was pretty much all at once. So I mean, we had around 7 or 8 properties that were booked, and at the time we didn't have Akia. We were using just kind of a combination of our digital rental agreement through our property management software, which just didn't allow us even to add a ID verification or anything. It was just more of a signature, kind of agreed to the rules and our rental agreements. So we got a bunch of bookings, and it turned out, we found out actually during the stay that we were getting chargebacks for the guest that was currently in the home. And that
my God.
Yeah, that
they were still there.
They were still in the home. Yeah. So
oh wow, okay.
Led us to kind of investigate, and we found out that they were using stolen credit cards to book the property, and then I guess reselling it to other folks who were not even at the properties or who were at the property. So it was a very sophisticated type of crime ring, but that's what ultimately kind of led me down the road to find you, and that's how we met. We learned our lesson really the hard way, with thousands of dollars of chargebacks, but catching it in kind of doing the research on what it could be, we ultimately, it was ultimately not being able to check the guest's ID and verify with like a selfie if that's actually the guest who was staying at the property and that's the one who purchased the with a credit card. So, I mean, all of those things kind of came into why we experienced that. And yeah, it was definitely a learning experience, that's for sure. But
yeah.
one of those things, us being a management company, I'm sure a lot of hotel folks, you have front desks. We don't, we solely rely on remote check-ins, and our, team remotely assisting guests to check in their properties, pretty commonplace in our industry. So we really miss that, face-to-face verification check that you can do with the hotel, which you can't really do with a vacation rental. And once it happens and they're in the home, it's too late. And you kind of lose out on that door to close when before they come in. So yeah, so that's kind of just a high level of kind of the fraud that we experienced. And then, we've had some other smaller things occur, but that was really the crux of our fraud issue that kind of had me find you guys and kind of enable some AI to help us out a bit with preventing it from the first place.
And then you're in different markets, right? So you're two different markets. Is it market strategic? Do you feel like there's different pockets? So you're in San Diego and Scottsdale, Phoenix, right? Is that right?
Yeah.
Okay. Do you feel like it's different per market? Do you feel like you get more kind of hit in one market versus the other? Do you feel like there's any nuances or differences between the two?
There's definitely differences. However, fraud is fraud, and these people are acting remotely anyways, probably from outside the United States, even in some cases. So, I mean, it's definitely a problem for every market. I think in this specific situation, it just hit all of our San Diego properties. They probably, found our vulnerability on our website and, decided to kind of take us out across all the open San Diego properties we had at the time. But it's definitely not specific to one market. It can happen anywhere. And, we employ these tools now to help us in each place. So.
And now we're gonna talk about the Akia tool here in just a moment, and like specifically how it can work and how you can leverage it. But are there any other patterns too that you see, like just anecdotally, even like, I've had some people to talk about like any booking that's made within like an arrival date of less than 24, 48 hours, that kind of pings their radar almost like, hey, let's triple check this. But are there any patterns that you see that you even just analog wise can identify and just share some any insight that you may see with other people and some things that you've helped identify to kind of stop them before they arrive?
Yeah, well, as you said, I mean, the timing is a big one. It's not exclusive to that, but definitely within 24 hours. Our team has always gone and done extra work to verify last minute guests, but definitely, those last minute requests can be much more risky, not only from, a fraud perspective, but also a guest quality perspective as well. We've had some issues on that front, but certainly I think that's definitely one of the biggest kind of indicators. But I will say that when we had that San Diego kind of issue happen, we did have one of the fraudulent bookings book a couple of weeks out. So they're playing long game as well. So I wouldn't say it's exclusively to just last minute bookings, but definitely keep your eye out for pretty much, anything now.
Yeah, well, just as we're using AI on the technical side, right, and for the businesses, what do you think the criminals are using? Do you think they're leveraging this stuff too, right? So it's almost like an arms race, right? It's like
they're definitely leveraging AI, I'm sure, as much as we are. So I mean, that's why it's you have to keep your technology stack, smart and efficient. Otherwise, they're going to definitely, probably as time goes, become more sophisticated in their ways they target companies like ours. So I think it's just really important to kind of keep that in mind. I mean, if we're employing and putting these new technology in place, so are they. So I think that's a really good point.
Yeah, it's like we got to keep up with them. It's like it's the thing where the person that like applies so much of their brain power to like cheating, like if you just applied yourself to doing it the right way, you'd be fine.
Exactly.
So yeah, I think that's great insight there. Do you have any age restrictions with your properties too, Peter, or does that matter for you guys?
So it varies by channel. I mean, like for everybody knows, Airbnb, for instance, they kind of control the age limits, which is 18 plus. So we just kind of have to deal with that. But across all of our other channels, we're 21 and over only.
Okay.
So yeah, we kind of put our stop there.
Okay, great. So let's talk briefly about like how Akia's solution can, dovetail into this. And again, Peter, feel free, we can share any your specific insight, obviously, as a user as this as well. But like we talked about, so Aki is leveraging AI. We talked about, like, obviously there's a number of different ways you can leverage that with guest experience and guest communication, which Aki can certainly leverage as well. But again, specifically to today's topic of really leveraging it to do fraud prevention and fraud detection as best as anyone can, is what we're doing is we're leveraging AI to like verify the identities and document the guest stays and preventing fraud potentially before it arrives. And so really the flows we'll go through this is you're able to design with Akia fully customizable rental agreements to really dovetail and fit in anything that you would like to capture about the guest to enhance their stay, help with their pre-arrival. But obviously, like today's topic is like verify identity to prevent fraud. So what this allows you to do is leverage the high response rate of text messages. So for example, if you're a hotelier or GM or a property manager today and you're like, hey, we already send out our registration agreements, we already do like an ID verification via email, you're talking about a 70 times higher response rate while doing it via text message. Just an easy way to think about that is like, try to think of the last time that you got an email that you didn't read. Likely happened while you've been on this webinar, right? We've all got a bunch of emails and they don't come through, you don't read them. But now think of the last time you got a text message and didn't at least read it. And so with Akia's platform, it allows you to use what we call our mini apps, which is our proprietary technology where it allows you to use like web-based, browser-based, like rental agreements, arrival guides, digital guidebooks, checkout instructions, any other litany of things that you need throughout the entire guest journey. But it allows you to use these browser-based technology, but then leveraging the high response rate of text message. So it's the best of both worlds. They don't need to download anything. They don't need to do anything like that. They're simply text a link and then they can go through the flow there. So with the rental agreement, you're able to build in requirements. And again, you can build in requirements to capture any information that you want, like email, etc., accompanying guest, anything like that. But more importantly for today's topic is that it allows you to require that they upload a government ID, so passport or ID, and also take a selfie. So that's the big thing, is uploading the ID. Sure, if you're doing that, like that's your minimum price of entry, right? But Peter, like you saw, like oftentimes these people are doing it remotely. But then also what I always tell people, like if I lost my wallet on public transit and you took my wallet, you would have my credit card and you would have my ID. Yep. So if your rental agreement says upload an ID, well, there you go. Like you're going to have my ID. But you wouldn't have a selfie of me. You can't unlock my phone. You don't have a photo of me that you can do that. That's really the power of it, is that allows you to upload the ID plus take a selfie. And then in real time, our system uses AI and machine learning to match the photo with the photo on the ID, and also take the name on the ID, extrapolate it out automatically, and then bounce it off the name on the reservation to make sure all of those things match. And then automatically verify that so they can verify it before they're ever arrived. And then what allows you to do is gate the property access to send that information. And so that way you can have your staff review it, et cetera, so you can go through there. So it's a very big difference, and a big leap forward in just requiring someone to get their ID. Again, I implore you, like if you're a hotel or you're a property manager right now, if you're not at a bare minimum collecting someone's ID, you at least got to do that right now, because that's at least the minimum price of entry, because you know that if you get a fraudulent charge, that's going to be the first thing. Is like, can you even verify that this person? But again, stealing someone's physical wallet is going to get that information. So that's certainly not going to detect a high number of fraud as well. And then again, this is an example of like what the registration flow can look like. So again, these are all fully customizable. You're able to fully customize what this flow looks like. You can make certain fields required, other fields optional. And again, this is all sent to them via text message, right? We can support email as well. So I think we've seen a question here, what if they don't have a cell phone? You can certainly do it via email as well, but really leveraging that high response rate of text message to get this as well. We see oftentimes upwards of 85, 90% of these rental agreements are completed within hours, right, of the reservation. And this integrates with the PMS, so it doesn't matter whether it's a third-party reservation, a direct booking, anything like that. You can certainly customize and design the flow as well. And so just to kind of give you like kind of overall the guest journey, again, Aki is not doing just the rental agreements. We really encompass the entire guest journey via that text message. So again, today's topic of a conversation, we want to talk about AI and fraud, but like Peter, as you know, you're leveraging text messages through the entire journey, right? And entirely how they go and how they communicate. And you could use AI with auto responses, things like that throughout other parts of the journey as well. But really with the pre-arrival, fully customizable rental agreements, again, requiring certain fields, making other fields optional, and they go through there. You can also see that when they're on property, you leverage AI to then automatically respond to inquiries, requests, questions, things of that nature. And then lastly, when they leave, we can help identify your most satisfied guest based upon their intent and their sentiment, and then leverage them and only them to then leave you reviews online. And oftentimes you're able to double your 5-star reviews, typically within the first year alone, just by leveraging that. So that's where really Aki comes into play here. We're going to open it up to the Q&A because we've had quite a few questions that have come through here. And so we'll do our best to get through all of these questions here. But let's go ahead and field a couple of questions that we've seen come out. So the first question is, does Aki integrate with your PMS? The question is, or the answer to that is yes. We integrate with all the top PMSs. So what's great is that it's going to get all of your reservation information automatically. You don't need to do duplicative data entry. You don't need to do any of that. You're able to curate your own fully customizable guest journeys, right? So again, starting with that rental agreement to get the ID, that can trigger automatically just by a new reservation coming in. You're also able to delineate whether or not they're a direct booking versus third-party booking, et cetera, things of that nature as well. So yeah, we integrate too. We have a full integration list on our website. So if you're wondering, but we integrate with all the top PMSs in the hotel and the PM space. So Track, Streamline, Escapia, Guesty, Hostaway, Hostfully, all of those ones. Peter, what's your PMS to use again? I forgot.
We're using Track.
Track, there you go. Okay, yeah. So we're certified partners with Track as well. Peter, I want you to talk about this too. What do you do in the flow if it comes back as an error? So let's say it errors out. Can you kind of just talk about that flow and what that looks like and how you guys manage that? That was one of the questions.
Yeah, so when their error comes out, that's either the photos don't match or the name is mismatched from what's the name on the reservation. So that's kind of when our team steps in and, they're trained to really take a deep dive at that guest and continue the verification process, to ensure that what's, the guest is reporting on their verification is actually what they say they are, who they are. So we're able to either approve or deny that at that point, which then continues the flow of the reservation. So if our team signs off on a certain, verification that had originally failed, we're able to continue them along the process, just like if they were approved. Same thing if, we don't feel like that guest is a good fit or it's too high risk, we can also cancel the reservation at that point. So it gives us those options to kind of take the path we want to take at that point.
Absolutely. You'll see some common ones that come through is maybe a partner booked the reservation and then their partner, spouse, significant other is then like doing the credit card, right, or the ID. And so sometimes that will trigger an error, right? But again, the point with this too is you're doing that first gate to stop like the actual fraudulent ones that to come through, and then you're going to have some ones that come through that I think Peter you articulated it well of like, well, we just have our staff then review it, right? But rather than reviewing every single reservation, you're now doing the 10%, right, or whatever that comes through. So you can also.
I was going to say one thing I like too is that you can put accompanying guests on that rental agreement as well. So we're able to see, actually, if this guest says they're bringing 5 guests with them, we collect the names for each one of those people. So we can also then do some research on the accompanying 5 guests, or maybe one of those 5 other guests are the ones who submitted their ID, who knows? But we're able to do additional verification based on that as well. So I just wanted to put that in there since that's helpful for us.
Helpful. Yeah, very good. And then you'll have some other common ones that you'll see, for example, have I booked the reservation? It may trigger an error because I go by John. That's what I use for everything since like 2nd grade. But technically my legal name and on my government ID is Jonathan, right? So that would trigger an error because it wouldn't match. But again, that would trigger an error. That would flag your staff. You can quickly see that the photo's the same, everything's the same, Jonathan. Okay, easy. Click a button. And then it kind of manually, like you said, kind of manually just passes them through the gate, right? So again, you can verify it. What's also very interesting too is our system will track who's the one approving that. Right. So if one of your staff members click the approve button, it tracks, hey, this is approved by Stephanie at this date and time. So again, if there are any issues, you can go back to it. So that's really helpful. Another question was, credit card information and how to do credit cards. So we can integrate with Stripe as well. So we can do credit card capture and credit card tokenizing as well. So we can collect the credit card, again, through that customizable rental agreement. That could be another gate as well. With Stripe, you can leverage Stripe Radar, which then takes that credit card and then bounces it off the global database that Stripe has to make sure that that credit card number is a real credit card, that it can hold the charge, and then also that there's been no reported stolen or fraudulent activity on that credit card. So we can do the credit card capture as well throughout that entire process as well. Another question is someone talking about, what about the fraudsters and like maybe photoshopping an ID or placing a picture of them on the ID? Have you seen any stuff like that, Peter, specifically? And how do you guys address that?
Yeah, I'm smiling because we have. that was another fraud instance. So we had actually, a guest. Well, I guessed. We asked for their photo ID, and at this time we didn't integrate with Aki at this point, but we took that guest's photo ID, and we noticed it was a little off. So we asked them to email us back a selfie, and this is before really selfies were kind of a thing that we were doing to verify. And we actually did a Google image search on the image on both their selfie image and also the ID, and we found that it was just a stock image that they had put over a driver's license. So I mean, we knew at that point, yeah, this is clearly fake. But it was definitely a kind of learning experience there to see the kind of sophistication of some of these fraudsters going around and doing a lot of the kind of high level fraud that they're doing. So yeah, that's kind of why I was laughing about that.
Yeah, I mean, again, they're getting more sophisticated, right? Sometimes people think like, okay, like they're going to continue to try to do stuff. We have another question here. This is to me. It says, John, you look like a young, smart, handsome young boy. How much can you bench press from Kelly? Okay, that's my mom. Mom, I'm working here. Thank you for that. Okay, I appreciate it. Thank you, everyone. I don't know, it's a lot how I could bench press, but sure. Okay, let's keep it to real questions, please, everyone. Let's keep it professional as we go through here. Okay. What about, let's see, pricing options? So we do have tailored pricing options. I would ask, because this is a webinar that we have with current customers who may need to upgrade, and then people that aren't current Akia customers. We have several different packages ranging, as low as like $3 per room per month, going up to like $9 per room or per unit per month. It really just depends on like the package that you need and you require. So I'd love anyone that is interested, you could just email sales@akia.com, and we could specifically reach out to you whether you need to upgrade your plan or talk to you about the package that would be more applicable for you if you're not a current customer. So again, anyone interested, if you could email sales@akia, AKIA.com, I'll reach out to you specifically, and we talk about different upgrade options as well. Is the ID stored safely? Yes. All of our information is encrypted, is backed up, it's tokenized, so it's not shared to anyone. It's fully secure, fully accessed, GDPR compliant. We work international, so Aki is based here in San Francisco, California, in the United States. However, we are on 6 continents, so we work globally as well. So our compliance is there. And we'll give it one more thing for any questions here. I'm just double checking here for any questions. Using the selfie there. Okay, yeah, we answered that one. And again, I think the big thing too here is Peter, that you talked about is like, again, you can still, even if someone gets approved, right, because it was matched, you could always check it too, right? So this isn't like something that you could then override that approval, right, and say, hey, no, let's double check this and go through there. But again, what we see is that the system does a really good job of picking up and deterring people from like kind of stopping that, where I've seen people and other PMs have shared with me, people try to like upload just a photo of their cat or just like a random photo snap, right? And then it's like when you go back and so, no, we do require a selfie, that often they just stop the process, right? Then allowing you to just cancel the reservation. Again, the whole point of this is, can you identify that fraud before it ever gets on property, so that we cancel a reservation? Because remember, that fraudulent charge isn't just costing you the $1,000 reservation in those 3 nights. It's costing you, the cost of lost opportunity, right? You can't go through there and like the amount that you could do those 3 days for. And so that's what really picks them up, is you can get them to like really identify them and kind of get them to like self-cancel out. Well, that's question is that I ask is like, does it do any kind of background or credit check? It does not. So we're just taking the photo and again matching. Really, what it's doing is matching the two photos together to make sure that they're the same person. Taking the name off the ID and then bouncing off the name on the reservation. And then again, you can integrate with Stripe to do the credit card identification as well. So it doesn't do like any background check or like credit check. The one caveat I would say to that too is that this is really the nuclear deterrent, right? Like these fraud people don't want photos of themselves, right? They lose their anonymity when they do that. So typically that is a major deterrent from them continuing on into the process. And so the reference that I like to tell people and what we've seen in the space is that you could certainly offer like, and you can do background checks, things of that nature. But if someone is really an outright criminal and has a very criminal background and they're trying to defraud you, they're going to stop well before they get to that point, right? Because they're not going to do the background check only to fail. It's like that person that applies for a job and they say, okay, you made it, we just need to do a drug test. And then they go and take the drug test. If they know they're going to fail, right, they usually just like stop doing it anyway. Like they're going to stop. So we've seen that once you start asking for photos, you start verifying the ID, typically that fraudster is going to stop. Like they're not going to continue on in the process. So oftentimes, if your end game is trying to deter that fraud from coming in, this is the deterrent that it requires. You don't need that other step as well. Some HOAs may require things of that nature, and that's another topic as well. But this is really designed to really identify them and kind of get them to like self-cancel out that reservation. Okay, double checking here. Last call for questions in the event of the chargebacks. So yes, if it goes to a chargeback, you have all the documentation. Right. So if it goes to that point where they do submit a chargeback, you now have their initials, you have their IDs, you have their signatures, you have their credit card, you have all of the documentation with all of the house rules, everything in there, all choreographed together and stored together. So that way you could then keep that information presented at the credit card information and have all that information. All right. So you can present that. So if it does get to the point that it goes to a chargeback, you'll have all the documentation to then win that chargeback. Right, if it comes to that, if it's not just like a fraud person, but like they're just trying to dispute the charge, like it wasn't them. But again, same thing, like oftentimes the people that are not quote unquote criminals, although I would consider them are, that they do go stay on a property. It is them, it wasn't fraud, but then at the end they say, no, it wasn't me. It wasn't me that went there. Well, how could they say that if you have their photos? Like, so you typically, again, detour those to get that and go through there. A couple last minute questions coming in here. Go ahead, Peter. I'm going to look first.
I was going to say we've had about 100% success rate with chargeback since we've had Akia, just from being able to provide that package of verification with the rental agreement and the selfie and the ID. I mean that really goes a long way with the credit card companies to go in our favor, much so than before when we were just having that rental agreement through our PMS. So yeah, it's been a big change. Chargebacks.
Great. Will the ID verification field read and fill out the passport information? Yes. Well, no, fill out the rental agreement by reading the ID. No. So if someone like scans their ID and then you then ask for them on their ID again, it won't automatically fill it out. We found that most PMs aren't doing that. So if you just want their ID and you have all that information, you can have that, but it won't auto-populate the fields from there as well. So you can require that they fill them out or have them in there. But yeah, it won't OCR it and then like fill out those required fields into the rental agreement itself. And then how easy is it to download the chargeback report? Really easy. So you have a web-based portal. You can just type in the person's name, find them, all the conversations thread, everything historically that you've ever sent to that guest is all stored in there. It's a one-click download. So you just click the rental agreement and Control-P and print it, download it, like whatever you need it. And then everything is tracked, everything is stored. And then including like the signatures, not only date and timestamps it, it also tracks their IP. Right. So again, like you can go to the point, if it ever gets to that point, like you can track that, like, okay, well, what's your home IP address? And like, oh, shocking. Like it matches on where you signed this document from your home Wi-Fi. So again, just all further going back to like when those chargebacks and disputes. Okay. Doesn't look like we have any questions here. I encourage anyone that just has any follow-up questions, feel free to reach out, sales@akia.com. I can address those back to you guys personally. So any follow-up questions we can go back to. But otherwise, we will wrap up today's conversation. So Peter, awesome insight. Thank you again for joining. This was super helpful. So I found a lot of value in this. So hopefully everyone that attended today also shares that sentiment and found some value. But thank you again for joining here and sharing a lot of your industry insight. We really appreciate it.
Thanks, John. Appreciate it.
Of course. And everyone that joined, thanks for joining. We appreciate it. Look forward for more topics and more follow-up webinars in the future as well. But thanks again, everyone, and enjoy the rest of your afternoon. Thanks, everyone.
Bye.